All right. So thank you all so much for coming. If you don't know me, I'm Emily Aborn, and I'm the owner of She Built This and also Emily Aborn Marketing. This is our first ever Stories That Connect night. And Crystal, I told some of the ladies in here before you guys got in, but Crystal had asked me about a month ago if I would be interested in doing kind of like a story slam night. And I said yes instantly. I really believe that like the stories that we tell, as we tell our stories, we connect to one another, and it shows something inside of each of us that the other person can relate to. And it also shows us that we can just be like real, honest human beings with one another. So I said, yes, definitely. And you know, I know we keep hearing the phrase, we're all in this together, we're all in this together, but we all go through experiences and life so differently. And I think that's kind of what we wanted to highlight in this evening. So Crystal's going to introduce herself, and then I'll give you ladies like the housekeeping for the night.
And well, you're too kind, really, seriously. So I too am forever grateful for the opportunity to collaborate with such an amazing entrepreneur like yourself, as well as these other female entrepreneurs that are on the call right now. So I had this idea, and I don't honestly know where it came from, but it came. And I think what happened was it stemmed from this idea that individuals innately, like we want to, regardless of male or female, we want to be seen and heard, right? And so like when we have a conversation with another human being, if they are busy preparing their response, we don't feel seen and heard. Like we are just feeling like somebody's preparing a response. And so when you share your story and people are intentionally listening and then sharing with you the positivity and the really constructive feedback that makes you feel amazing for one, who you are and the story that you're telling, you then feel seen and heard. And so I think that this is like, I'm hoping, I guess, that this is the first night where women can share stories and feel empowered by the power of positivity and support, and then encourage more people to share their stories because we're all in this together, like you said. So now for some housekeeping.
Yeah, so the housekeeping, to touch on that point, we want, after the storytellers, we want you guys to share what you loved about their story. We want you to share like the good things that you found in the story, what inspired you, what is ringing in your ears, what stuck out to you. The only like rules, I guess, are that I really want you to make sure that you keep your feedback positive. Like you're not critiquing anybody tonight. You're just listening and soaking it up and saying what you loved about the person sharing and the story that they're telling. And then the only other thing is just to not spin it back on yourself. So when you say, you know, I really loved that you shared that experience, don't say, when I was 5, I had the same thing happen to me. Like, this is what happened. And then this happened. Yeah. Like this is, it is about you in that you're here experiencing it with us, but it is about the people telling the stories. So that's the only like rules that we have. Each person is going to talk for 5 minutes, and then we're going to give some time after where we can give feedback. And if we have time at the end, we can totally do questions, but the feedback time isn't really for questions, if that makes sense. And the only other thing is when they're speaking, just keep your mic on mute, and then we can all unmute ourselves after a person speaks. And there's like this nice little clapping tool down here in reactions. So feel free to like do those kind of things the whole time, you know, be expressive. That's all good. Even though you're on mute, doesn't mean you have to not use your little emojis down here. All right, so that is the housekeeping. And I'm going to start by introducing Lisa Law, who is going first. So Lisa Law is, Lisa, give us a little wave so we know who you are. Okay. Oh, and one last thing. If you want to, when a person is speaking, you can put it on speaker view, and then they'll be the only person you see, so we don't all have to be. That's totally up to you. I like looking at everybody, but okay. So Lisa Law is the owner of Lisa Law Feng Shui in Merrimack. She specializes in decluttering, home staging, and wellness programs. She's an author, speaker, consultant, and spiritual coach, and she lives in Nashua with her husband, Brian. She has 2 adult children, Hunter and Victoria, and fun fact, she grew up at her family's ski area right around the corner from where I am at this very second, and could literally ski out her front door every day. And then she passed on the passion of skiing to her children, and especially her son, Hunter. So Lisa, take it away.
Well, thanks, Emily and Crystal, for having all of us here. It's fun to be able to share with you. So like Emily said, I grew up here in New Hampshire, and about 20 years ago, we went through a lot of change. A number of people in our family passed away. There were some divorces in our family outside of us. And over that time, I started accumulating a lot of the family things. I was that person that whenever anyone didn't know what to do with something, it ended up in our basement or it ended up in our storage facility. And when I really got interested in feng shui was after my mom passed away. I turned 40 that year and my grandmother was 90. And I was going back and forth to Florida, taking care of her, maintaining a real estate career and taking care of my kids. And I developed a really bad anxiety problem and depression, and every area of my life felt off balance. And I realized one day down in my basement when I looked around and saw things from every single person in my family in all these situations that were no longer in my life, that it was keeping me stuck. And I've been working with feng shui quite a bit at that point. And there's a philosophy in feng shui that you need to make space in your physical environment if you want something new to come to you. And it works in the physical and also on the spiritual plane. So my husband and I gave away more than half of our stuff over the course of about 6 months. And during that time, I set this intention to shift myself in a big way. I wanted to feel better. I wanted to move forward in my life, and I wanted to be happy again. I wasn't happy in that time. I was really stressed out and unhappy. And the more and more I worked with the feng shui and the more I let go of, there was this sense of freedom that came over me. And I got to the end of this period, and it was such a profound change that I wanted to start teaching other people feng shui. And so I went out to California and I went sight unseen. I had read this book and read that they had a practitioner training, and I showed up in California and was immersed in it. And so it was a big leap of faith. And it just opened me up to this whole world of energy healing. Louise Hay was at my training. She's my mentor's mentor, or was. And so I was, for the first time, around all of these spiritual people. I'd grown up at Temple Mountain in nature, and my family are big nature lovers, but we weren't religious or spiritual. And I was very spiritual, and I would say I had this whole kind of secret spiritual life. And for the first time, I started speaking openly with these other people, and we were speaking the same language. And so when I came home, I started teaching the feng shui, and everybody around me was like, "Oh, what? What are you talking about?" They thought I'd taken leave of my senses. And so I started my newsletter about 10 years ago, just to educate people about what feng shui was. And then I had this opportunity to go to a free meditation night with a gentleman from Singapore. And I went to the free program. I stayed for the weekend. And 2 weeks later, he was doing a trip in Nepal. So I joined 25 other people who were doing healing work like I am from all over the world in Nepal, and we were there for 2 weeks. And I continued to travel with that group for about 5 years, studying meditation and studying spirituality. And I continued to shift. I became like this positive ripple in my family over that time. Every area of my life improved. All of my relationships improved. And I became kind of like a different person. I feel like that person that was stressed and anxious and all of that, I still love her. I still appreciate her, and I appreciate all the experiences that led to the stress I was under to shift me in this way that I am now. And so I brought all that back, and it was such a profound experience that was hard to talk about. So I started doing spiritual groups. I do a monthly lunch and learn similar to what Emily's doing here. That's why I love Emily's classes here so much. She's doing these great things. And I wrote my first book, and it brings in the spirituality of feng shui that I learned through that meditation. And I had to learn, part of my clutter was the role I was playing in my family. I was the go-to person, I was the rock, and I realized that putting all my energy into everyone else's dramas and everyone's ups and downs was keeping me from doing the work I was meant to do. And so I had to rein back, and I tried to do it in a kind and compassionate way. But when I gave people back their physical things, I was also giving them back the reins of their life, that they needed to be the keeper of their own life so that I could be the keeper of my own life. And so it was a big part of that spiritual journey. And so that's what I like to teach people, is giving them permission to follow their passions, to build an environment around them that's safe and nurturing and helpful. And that's what the feng shui does. And I share my feng shui in my decluttering story because it allows other people to realize that it's okay to let go. It's okay to let go of the past, so that you can embrace whatever's going to come in the future. And a lot of times when you leave it up to our spiritual helpers, they come up with a much bigger and better plan than what we could have come up with on our own. And that's been my experience that I like to share with people.
Yay! Lisa, I love that you didn't let go of the person that you were. Like you didn't dislike the person that you were in the past, even though that person was going through hard things and maybe wasn't the person that you necessarily wanted to be, but you didn't falter for that. You just simply, like you said, like with the feng shui, you just let her go, and that alone was the step you needed to become who you are now. So I really, really loved that part of your story.
I love the whole like leaving up to the spiritual, like when you stop fighting the universe is when life starts happening for you. And I feel like you really shared that and how that was demonstrated in your life. Because I think so often where we wait until we're like smacked in the face with like, you know, the obvious, like you need to do this right now situation, but you sort of articulated how like you should just embrace that. And so I think people that may not have necessarily observed spirit or spiritual beings trying to influence your life may be more open to that. So thank you for sharing that.
I was so impressed, Lisa, that you gave the stuff back. That you didn't just leave it in storage. I'm serious. I think that's.
No, I literally left things on people's front lawns if they weren't home. Because if you have ever stored anything for someone else, you try and give it back, and it's like herding cats. And so I would just fill my car with their stuff, and if they weren't home, I'd leave it on their front lawn.
Well, it seems like it would take a lot of courage, and it puts the responsibility where it belongs.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to say, I'm really impressed that you said you gave like half of your stuff, or got rid of half of your stuff, which is super impressive. That is a lot of stuff. Like if I'm looking at my desk and I have 2 books on my desk, asking me to get rid of 1 book is difficult. So you getting rid of half of everything you own, that's a big step.
We have a lot of stuff.
I love your courage. Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, I love your courage that you went to that conference in the West Coast. Was it California? Sight unseen. Like that's bravery. You probably didn't know anybody there either, right?
No, I knew nobody walking in. I had read her book a bunch of times, and I just showed up on the first day, and yeah.
That's bravery.
It was I'm proud of that girl too.
Awesome.
She jumped a bunch of times.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your story with us, Lisa.
Thanks.
All right, Crystal, you're going to introduce Heather.
Okay. Heather Murphy is a genealogist and family history coach. She helps people gain clarity and strength in their present as they research their ancestors, learning not only their names, but their stories. She lives in Kennewick, Washington, with her husband, 12-year-old son, 3 ducks, which are so cute, and 1 rabbit. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
We're happy to have you.
Yeah, that's fun. So I decided about a year ago that it was time for me to start a business. Up until then, I'd been homeschooling my son, and I thought that he was old enough that I could manage something else other than just him at the time. I hired a business coach. We made a great website. I had a good strategy in place. And I even was selected as a speaker at one of my industry's biggest conferences. But in spite of all that, I still had a lot of fears that I needed to work through. Fears that maybe what I knew was out of date and somebody was going to tell me that I was wrong, or that somebody in the industry would look at the way I chose to do my business, which was completely different than anything else anybody else was doing, and think I was crazy. Or just simply that me having something else other to focus on other than my son would upset the balance in our family, and it might not be a good thing. And even though I was able to identify fears like these, I was able to also know that there were other fears, other things that were blocking me that I didn't know. I just knew they were there, but I wasn't quite sure how to get them out so that I could deal with them and move forward in my business. Well, being a genealogist, I work a lot with my own family history. And one day I decided I wanted to make a family tree, but not just with the people in the tree. I wanted to know what occupations they had. So I sat down at my desk and I got out a nice piece of paper and sketched out a family tree and started working on putting in this information. The first couple generations were easy. I knew my parents and my grandparents and was able to fill out their different occupations that they had throughout their life without much trouble at all. And then I moved on to my great-grandparents and great-great-grandparents, and that's when I needed to pull out my family records and historical documents to make sure that I got things accurate. When I was done, I had 30 people on this piece of paper and the ways that they had supported their families. And I sat there and I looked at this piece of paper and all the different things that people had done. It was mostly laborers and farm workers and housewives, nothing extraordinary at all. When suddenly I caught my breath because I saw something that I wasn't looking for. You see, even though I didn't realize it, I had taken a belief that had been passed down in generations and internalized it. I had come to believe that the women in my family only worked when they had children at home if tragedy struck. On my mom's 32nd birthday, my dad was in a work accident, and from then on, she was responsible for supporting our family of 7. And her grandmother, when she was 27, her husband died, and she had to support her 5 children. So without realizing it, I had internalized that women only worked if they absolutely had to. And that wasn't the case for my family. My husband was supporting us just fine. We had everything that we needed. There was no financial reason that compelled me to bring an income into our family. But by recognizing this belief that I had within me, I was able to tell myself that that wasn't the case for me, that that was their stories and that it didn't need to be my story. And instead, I could flip it. Instead, I could focus on the resilience and the strength of these women in my family, and I could use those traits as I sought to build my business, as I sought to have the courage and strength and fortitude that I needed to pursue my dream. And that as I did that, I could let those fears fall by the wayside so they weren't blocking me anymore, and so that I could move forward in something that I know I meant to do, even though it's different than the stories of the other women in my family. Thank you.
Well done.
Wow.
Oh, that was so amazing.
Reactions.
Thanks.
I loved how you described every single fear, like, so perfectly, but then there was this huge chunk of something missing that you didn't know what it was. Like, you couldn't put your finger on it until you went digging and digging and digging. And I absolutely love the discovery that you made. I feel like you didn't outright say this, but I feel like that discovery is what set you on the career path that you're on, rather than whatever you were considering for a business before. You didn't say that, but that was what I gathered. Which I am curious if you had something else you were planning and then this is where it brought you. But it was so, so good. And I also love that concept of having an occupational family tree. That's super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the occupational family tree was totally humanizes everybody, right? Like it puts them, tells you a lot maybe about them and the dynamic. I thought that was really cool. I would love to do that for my own family. How neat.
And again, courage comes to mind, Heather, because you said that one of your fears was knowing that you were doing things differently than other people. And that just takes such a determination to go upstream, and go against the tide.
Yeah, Lisa, I'm with you. I feel like hearing the story about how, we all, like, as females, we create our norms based upon what society says we should be or what our families say we should be. And so when we have the courage to sort of reframe and set our new boundaries, it shows the power that we actually have. And so to have the ability to take your power back and reframe and make your life what you want it to be is super empowering. So totally 100% agree.
Yeah. Well, and to recognize the family patterns. So many of us don't recognize family patterns and self-limiting beliefs. And it's something you inherited, not something that was in you. Well, it makes you wonder how much of that gets passed in our actual physical DNA too.
Sure.
Or is it the culture within a family?
Yeah, I like Emily was saying, I just found it fascinating that you came to that revelation in the way that you did. Like, that's just so unique. I've never heard anything like that before, and it's just, it makes it's not about me, but I think we probably all would think, gosh, I wonder what that would be like, if I analyzed that's brilliant.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah. We loved it, Heather. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Emily is next. I just love knowing fellow Emilys because it's always like, what's this person like that has the same name? Okay, this is not about me. So Emily Otterman is an artist and entrepreneur who helps people preserve and celebrate what matters most. She lives in Merrimack, New Hampshire, and she actually moved here from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, after meeting and falling in love with her husband in Chicago, which she says is another story for another day. They are soon to be empty nesters and have a son attending the University of Richmond and a daughter who plans to attend NCC in the fall. Emily, the stage is yours.
Thank you. Am I allowed to screen share? Because unlike you guys, I'm so bad with being off the cuff, and I've got like my notes and everything, and I've got some slides to show too. If I can do that, am I able to?
Let's try it.
If
anything goes bad with us trying to get back to the regular screen, we'll just rejoin the meeting. That'll be that's the pact. But I think it'll be okay.
You got it. She'll be fine.
Okay, I hope we don't lose you, but bear with me while I get this like technology set up here. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Emily, I think it's something that has to be set up in settings on the actual website.
If you, and try, well, we're on a webinar though, so right click on Emily Otterman.
I think I can try it.
And see.
Oh, yeah, beautiful.
Okay.
Beautiful. Can you see that? Does it say gratitude? Okay, perfect.
Good.
Okay, all right. Okay, girls, here we go. I thought I knew what gratitude was, but the gratitude I witnessed was like a massive aura of joy, as forceful as the ocean, and it was incredibly emotional. I'm Emily Otterman, artist and entrepreneur. I help people preserve and celebrate what matters most, and often incorporate meaningful images of people, places, or things into the artwork I create. The Second World War killed about 56 million people, and when it was over, countries began picking up the pieces. Young Allied soldiers who fought and survived began their return home. Those heroes are now in their 90s, aging and rapidly leaving this world. My father was a soldier who risked his life to do his part in the war effort, and I traveled with him to the Netherlands in 2015 with a group of other Canadian veterans and their families for the 70th anniversary of that nation's liberation. The experience deeply affected me, and it became my mission to translate what I witnessed into artwork that celebrates our human connection, embraces the power of gratitude, and provides a lasting legacy for the veterans. These heroes unite us as individuals and as nations, and they deserve to be remembered. The Gratitude Collection was born as a result. It's been 3 years in the making, comprised of 8 large panels with each veteran from our 2015 trip represented in them. Working on the photographic images of these veterans so intently, seeing the shape of their hands, the depth of their eyes, it allowed me to feel a much closer personal connection to them. It was difficult for me at times since 8 of the 18 in our group had since died, and I felt the looming reality that my dad could be the next to go. And really, what if he hadn't made it back home in 1945 and married his girl? I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be using my creativity for this purpose. I've been given this opportunity to celebrate our connection to one another, to show the importance of touch, both figuratively and literally, and to commemorate the human cost of war. This past May marked the 75th anniversary of freedom. It was to be a big celebration. 6 veterans, including my 95-year-old dad and families, were to travel back to the Netherlands together. A committee had secured a place for the Gratitude Collection to be exhibited for 3 months. They realized the importance of bringing 2 countries together and focusing on the legacy of the veterans. The artwork was to provide a visual placeholder for generations to come, and a way to educate about the cost of freedom and to serve as a reminder of human bonds and friendships that come from adversity. It was to be the first time my dad and the other veterans would see the artwork they inspired me to create. COVID-19 reared its ugly head and threw us all into an unknown. The trip was canceled, and sadly and suddenly, my dad died. He was an incredible human, a man who possessed great humility, kindness, and quiet wisdom. He didn't get to see my artwork, and the reality of the word legacy sits agitated in my soul, motivating me to reach the world with the message of gratitude.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Emily. And you were 100% right that the images needed to be on the screen. That was beautiful. I'd love to hear what everyone.
I'm not crying, you are. No, I mean, you know, because it's so immediate, right? It's so close in time. So that's the emotional piece of that. But what a blessing to have been working on that project, and he saw you doing that while he was alive. So he knew that you already had that gratitude. So that's the gift that, you know, you share, even though he's not on this side with you. And I think that's wonderful.
And what a beautiful tribute to him as you move forward in what you're doing.
That's the picture behind you, isn't it?
Yeah, that's one of the pieces that that is in the collection. Yeah, yeah. It's you know, it's hard to, you know, it's fresh, but I feel blessed, you know, that I was able to do that, and that I was inspired by it, by the trip and by the whole experience. I mean, it was just incredible. You've just never witnessed anything like it. Yeah.
Your images are so moving. I haven't seen anything like that marries the past and the present and just the raw emotion, and just really, really powerful.
Thank you.
I agree, Liz. Emily, are you, I guess I should have, I'm trying to remember your bio, but are you an artist? Do you do digital photography like that?
Well, yeah, some of the work that I do incorporates digital photography. Yes. A lot of what I'm doing.
Yeah, really well done. And I no doubt that, you know this already, but he didn't see it, but he did, right? I mean, you know,
Yeah.
It's certainly not, I feel like they're forever watching, and there's a reason why everything happens, right? As cliche as it is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Emily, I found what you did to be so incredibly beautiful and touching, and all that history that you just captured, and it was beautiful. So well done. And I'm sure your dad appreciated every effort you put into it.
Thanks.
Such a divisive time. It's wonderful to see love. So thank you.
It's a hard thing to share, but thank you, Emily, because I think a lot of times we all go through something similar and we don't know how to articulate that, or how to not take it for granted, or see where the gratitude may lie. And so your vulnerability in sharing, I think, is a sort of an example of how we can, one, live in the moment, because you did that, and then also like reflect on those moments in a really captivating way. So thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you, Emily.
Thanks.
It's hard to follow a story like that. Am I supposed to do the next introduction now? I don't know if I can.
Sorry.
I'm like,
I
sorry.
think you down there.
Okay, Lindsay, sorry, gotta do this to you, but
That's okay.
okay, Lindsay Taylor is the owner of Tailored Image, a branding and design studio, and Naughty Good Bites, a gourmet chocolate company whose mission is bigger than a bite. In addition to her two businesses, Lindsay helps her husband run his contracting business, TB Taylor Building and Remodeling, is mom of just 4 children, 4 amazing children, and 2 golden retrievers. Not to mention, she also volunteers her time giving back to her community, and still manages to find time to run 5 to 6 times per week. So now if you didn't feel bad about yourself then, you do now. So here you go, Lindsay.
Okay. Thanks. Oh, by golly. Okay. So like Emily, I prefer to read. I have, I could talk forever if I didn't. So that's probably why I write something out. So I'm just gonna take it away. All right. It took us 3 years to conceive our first child. So you can imagine our surprise when we found out that we were pregnant with our second before we ever even knew we were trying. The pregnancy went smooth, and our son, Sawyer Dean Taylor, was born on August 29, 2007. His name paid tribute to my maiden name and to an uncle who had passed when I was young. By all accounts, he was a perfectly healthy newborn and was cleared to go home just 48 hours after delivery. Initially, Sawyer did great at home, was adjusting well and starting to take on a personality all his own. He was a spitting image of his daddy with a tender soul and a quiet demeanor. But at a mere 8 days old, Sawyer became irritable, lethargic, and had a seizure while in my husband's arms. We called 911 and were rushed to the local hospital. During the ride in the ambulance, his seizures had passed and he seemed okay. But minutes from the hospital, Sawyer's vital signs dipped drastically. The siren sounded and the ambulance sped up. I recall sitting back, stiff as a board, gripping the seat beneath me, gently saying loud enough for him to hear, coaxing him back to us. When we arrived at the hospital, Sawyer had recouped and again seemed okay. Our son's condition and our frail emotions continued to roller coaster for the next couple of hours. An expert neonatal team was called in and Sawyer was transported to their facility. An amazing team of doctors and nurses worked tirelessly to diagnose and treat our son's unknown condition. Blood was taken and sent to labs both locally and across the country. Numerous tests were done, CAT scans, brain scan, EKGs, you name it. We were told there's nothing your son can't throw at us that we can't fix. And we all truly believed it. 24 hours after arriving, a massive team of doctors and nurses were ordered stat to discuss the findings. We were informed that Sawyer was no longer breathing on his own and that he had little to no brain activity. The neonatal neurologist told us that our son had a suspected metabolic disorder, a condition from conception that we had no control over, and that his blood pressure and heart rate were dropping rapidly. Sawyer would not survive. We had decisions to make, ones no parent should ever have to face. The doctors were speechless, the nurses lowered their heads, and we were all in shock. Hours later, we laid in a hospital bed with the tiny strength of our son between us. We told Sawyer it was okay to go. We held and loved him and felt warmth and pride as we allowed our son to leave this earth for greater possibilities. We ached, we yearned, we felt empty. To watch your own child, your own flesh and blood, the product of the love between you and your very best friend, pass before your eyes, that moment is frozen in time. We loved, held, and cared for our precious son up until the very last beat of his heart. The next year was the most trying time of my life. I doubted, I blamed, I questioned. We sought help and we stumbled upon a local support group. Surrounding ourselves with people in our position was invaluable. We were not alone. 5 mothers in particular became my lifeline. Each lost a child in their own unique way. Each could have curled under their sheet and hidden from the world. But we felt to give back and to make our babies' lives matter. Together, by sharing our stories and reaching out to other grieving moms, we learned to laugh again and to bring sunshine back into our lives. Along with our spouses, we co-founded a successful nonprofit where we celebrated lives cut too short and mourned futures left untold. It was a way to keep all babies' memories alive and to allow them a voice. During our event's 8-year crusade, we raised over $250,000 for the Make-A-Wish Foundation of New Hampshire. Make their wishes come true. In addition, we attended workshops on pregnancy, stillbirth, and neonatal loss, held grief and bereavement groups, met with local hospitals to discuss ways in which they could better care for newly grieving parents, and sat on parent panels to share our stories and offer insight into our journeys. We became the lifeline for other mothers, like those we were lucky enough to stumble upon after our own losses. And we became the voice for those who could not muster the courage to yet stand on their own. Today, almost 13 years later, Sawyer has a big sister and 2 little brothers. I know for certain that he was not sent here to break my heart, nor to be a mere statistic. He would not want me to dwell in his absence. He'd want me to make a difference. Sawyer taught me that beauty is to be felt and not seen. We have moved forward and have taken our beautiful son with us. We still hurt and we still cry, but we have found laughter and joy in the face of adversity. Good has come from our tragedy, and we have welcomed it. I share this story not for sympathy, but to inspire others to seek the other side. Empower yourself. No matter how hard life seems, there's always light after dark.
Dust yourself off and believe in your own strength. Don't compare your sorrows to others. Empower each other. If you see somebody down, lift them up. Give them the courage to stand, because when great women come together, even greater things can happen.
Lindsay, I want to cry first. Like I'm fighting it back right now. So I've had the privilege, I have to jump in just because I've had the privilege of hearing your story kind of before. And you just articulate it in such a way that is surreal to me, because for me, having one child, I can't even imagine the pain that you must feel when you recount that story to me, which I don't think I'm a stranger at this point, but to maybe strangers, right? And so I don't know how you do it, right? Like when like, so, you know, my father passed away 8 years ago. My mother could pass away at any moment in time, but for me to think about my daughter passing away is a completely different feeling than anything else in my entire life. And for you, and like I oftentimes will say, like in the times of suck, it's hard to see the silver lining. Like it's hard to see like there's something good that's going to come from this this really shitty thing that's happening to me right now. But you managed to frame your experiences in life in a way that's like you feel it. So we know that you're not insensitive or, you know, like you feel, obviously you feel Sawyer, you feel him every day, but you know that there's a bigger purpose for that. And to me, that is probably the most inspiring story I could ever hear in my entire life, because to me as a mother, that is the most harmful, hurtful, sad thing that could happen to me, is my daughter being taken away from me.
Yeah.
And to know that there's good in that is like a magical, like little beanstalk that just like ruminates in there, if that makes sense.
I remember, so our doctor, Dr. Frem, in about Maine Medical, he said to me as Sawyer was laying on the table and we had to make bazillion decisions, he said, Lindsay, when you wake up every morning, I just need you to ask yourself what he would want you to do. And honestly, I've hung on to those words, because if I hadn't have heard that, and then I had another friend who said, you know, he's more than a mere statistic. That's where that part of my story comes from, is I had a friend who said that to me, and those two things, I'm like, that I had to do something, you know, I had to, and a lot of people have heard that this is why I do what I do, and I do everything because I want him, when I meet him, and I want him to know, I want him to be proud that he chose me, you know?
Oh, God, kudos to you.
Lindsay, I just want to say thank you for.
I have so much love for Lindsay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sharing.
Thank you for hearing it. Thank you.
And I think, I can't remember who, Lisa keeps saying courage. And I think it takes a lot of courage, not only to share your story, but also to make the decision that you did, that something that you were going to choose to look on the bright side of this. And then not only that, but encourage other people to do that with areas in their life that they're going through. So
yeah, that's what we always tell people, like, it's not, so I always say, don't compare your sorrow to mine, or I will never do that to somebody else, because everybody has a different threshold. Everybody has a different worst, you know. Some people haven't lost a child, and that's okay, but they've had another, even if it's a job loss or if it's something, I feel like we can all take from that. And unfortunately, my story, and any type of story of grief or loss isn't unique. It's just those who are willing to tell it. And I've just been able to realize how much we can affect one person just by telling it.
Well, Lindsay, that's so fair, right? Because it's comparison syndrome. Like Emily just posted this event for the Live and Learn or Live and Learn, whatever you want to call it. But imposter syndrome, like we oftentimes compare ourselves to all of these other people, right? And it's not apples to apples. Like stress for you or losing a child for you is different than it is for me. Like for me, maybe my grandmother who took care of me and was a World War II vet, right? Like it's all relative and it's all subjective, but throwing it out there and putting it out there and knowing that somebody else knows the pain that I feel, regardless of what the capacity is so hugely impactful. I can't even articulate what that means to me personally.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Lindsay, I'm going to remember to decide to
Sorry.
move forward.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you've impacted people in a big way too, collectively raising funds for the Make-A-Wish Foundation. That's a huge deal.
There were moms who came to our event who had never said their baby's name in over 50 years. Yeah. It was powerful. It is such a taboo conversation, but it happens all the time. My grandmother was one of them. She lost a baby, and first time she ever celebrated her was at my event. So,
oh, what a gift.
Yeah. It was awesome. We were bummed that we ended it, but it was, I think we all just were maxed, so.
That happens.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah. So we carry on in other ways. So yeah, it's okay.
Thank you.
But thank you.
Whew.
Sorry.
Thanks, Lindsay. Let's order some Naughty Good Bites.
See?
That's what that was all about.
I need all of the Naughty Good Bites right now.
Full circle, Crystal. Full circle. Good job.
Hey, get it together.
All right, so we have one more, Liz Wyman, who I just want you to know, I love all of you ladies so much. I've been really enjoying getting to know Liz lately through some things that we've been doing together collaboratively, and she is a lovely human being. So Liz Wyman is a life coach in Lancaster, New Hampshire, and she is the founder of unperfectionism.com. She helps women who let go of perfectionism and other self-sabotaging habits so they can be happier and get shit done. Her words, not mine. When she's not with a client, you will find her.
It's like my words, though, because mine.
No, we're allowed to cuss. It's okay. When she's not with a client, you will probably find her in the woods, on top of a mountain, or snuggling her rescue pup, Baxter Rose. Go ahead, Liz.
All right. Thank you, Emily. And thank you, Lindsay, for already making me cry, because I was afraid that my story was going to make me cry. So now I already got it over with. Or if it just keeps going.
It all.
All right. Mine's a little different. This is something I wrote a while back that I dusted off. Yeah, it's in a little bit different format than everybody else's, but it's still my story. This is a story about a high-achieving woman who broke into pieces and put herself back together again, then helped others do the same. Liz was always the best at everything she did. She got straight A's all through school and graduated at the top of her class in high school and college. She got into prestigious graduate programs. She married her high school sweetheart and bought a cute little house in the mountains she loved. She had a promising academic career ahead of her and was excited to start a family. But she wasn't very happy. She put so much pressure on herself. She felt very alone. She couldn't handle criticism or rejection. She tried to plan and control everything. And at the same time, she tried to lose control by drinking and partying. She made choices that destroyed her marriage. Then she was really alone, and her whole future fell apart. She had to quit her PhD and go back to work. She feared she would never have the family she longed for. Liz entered a dark place. She hated her jobs. She hated her bosses. She hated going home to an empty house. She kept super busy to deflect the pain. But she stayed strong and kept putting one foot in front of the other. She climbed mountains, lots of mountains. She survived the next few years that way. And then one day, she couldn't do it anymore. She broke. She was diagnosed with depression and anxiety. She couldn't work. She wanted to die. She went to her first treatment facility. She quit drinking. Then, for the next 2 years, she was unemployed. She couldn't get out of bed for days, sometimes weeks. She went into debt she had to file for psychiatric disability. She felt so ashamed, useless, broken. More therapy, more treatment programs, lots of 12-step work. But she hid it all from the world. She had a cover. She was writing a book, she said. She pretended she was still successful and perfect and productive. Finally, she met a new guy, actually a guy she knew when she was a kid. She told him she was broken, but he wasn't scared. She was scared, though, that he would leave. She tried to push him away. She fell into old patterns of behavior, but this time she watched her actions as an observer. She got curious. She put things together and discovered that she had borderline personality disorder. She started dialectical behavior therapy. Her DBT class was taught by a life coach. It started to open things up for her. She got curious about this life coaching thing. As she started to learn more and feel a little better, she wondered if she could use her knowledge to help others. She met another woman who was training to be a life coach, so she researched what this coaching thing was all about. She discovered the Coactive Training Institute, CTI, and on impulse signed up for their fundamentals class. On the first day of fundamentals, Liz was picked as the client for a coaching demo. The topic she had chosen on the Wheel of Life was money. She broke down and confessed that she was mentally ill and on disability to a room full of strangers. She'd never even told her friends. Something opened up in that moment, and something amazing happened. People didn't shame her or look down on her. Instead, they supported her and applauded her bravery and authenticity. On that day, she began to walk a new path. Her coaching journey was not smooth because she brought a lot of her old stuff with her. She went into achiever mode and needed to be the best. She judged and compared. She craved approval and praise. She went all in on her coaching business, and then crickets. The clients didn't sign up. The discovery calls canceled. She got discouraged. She got angry and depressed. She felt like a failure again and started to question this path. She fell back into a dark place. In her process course at CTI, she learned that her biggest fear was that she wasn't good enough. She realized that she lived in an all or nothing world where unless she was the best, she was a failure. Her self-worth was built on the approval of others. She became aware of this, but didn't know what to do with it. Self-knowledge didn't make her feel any less like shit. From this dark place, she got curious again. She started to read more about perfectionism, and she saw how deeply all of her actions were rooted in this fear of not being good enough. The people-pleasing, the avoidance and procrastination, giving up when things got hard, numbing her feelings, the need for control, the need for approval, the fear of criticism and rejection. She started to develop tools to disarm her inner critic. She knew she needed to figure this out before she could help other people. She also realized that this perfectionism thing is what she needed to help them with. Liz disconnected from the coaching world for a while she figured it out. Yet she couldn't shake this idea, this calling to coach women on perfectionism. She spent time fleshing out her new niche. She took business courses and rebuilt her business. She got beta clients and facilitated huge transformations in a short amount of time. She embraced failure and uncertainty. She tricked her saboteurs by celebrating her fuck-ups instead of beating herself up over them. She discovered the positive intelligence work of Shirzad Shamin and signed up for his 6-week course to learn more about her self-sabotaging tendencies and how to overcome them. On the first day of the program, her PQ score was 27 out of 100. In other words, her emotional health was failing despite all the previous work that she'd done. 2 months later, it was 80. She was sold. She became a PQ coach and started offering this work to other women who experienced profound transformations. Liz spent years wanting to die. Then her coaching business gave her purpose. It gave her hope. It gave her a reason to get out of bed every day. It took her outside of her own head to focus on healing others. Today, she's helping dozens of women learn to love themselves and take action towards their dreams. She and Seth are planning their wedding and their family. Her business saved her life. This was a story about a beautiful, loving, passionate woman who had to travel a dark path in order to find her inner light. Now she shines that light on others. The end.
Ah, you guys, these are so insanely beautiful. I love it.
I know. We're not supposed to assume the narrator is the person that's talking, but when the narrator is Liz.
No, that's Liz, I love how you so vividly described like that journey of going down, 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 down in your life. And then you brought us up, 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 up. But then you showed us reality, which is this. And that's just every day. Like I noticed you did that at the last part. You were like, okay, here's the good things, here's the bad things, here's the good things, here's the bad things. It was awesome. But thank you just for sharing like your journey with us and how it created this whole entire business for you that I don't think you had originally set out to do.
No, she didn't. Because when I met Liz, it was like, let's go on adventures that like make us feel like we're fun. But seriously, well, I'm not fun, but there's that. But no, like to acknowledge and admit that life can like really suck, and like all of the things that have gotten us there, and then realize like inadvertently what has pulled us out of that like shittiness is really amazing. Because I think like sometimes we don't acknowledge like that there's a pivot at the bottom, right? So like it's hard to sometimes see like, okay, maybe if we follow this trajectory, maybe there's a way we can win. And like it's okay to not feel great about yourself. Like that's okay to feel really sort of poorly about how life is going. But then at some point, if you're able to grasp onto what makes you feel good about living your life, you have to like acknowledge that the universe is giving you this opportunity. And it may not be this mainstream, beautiful thing like, I don't know, who do we follow? Rachel Hollis and like all those people, like, I don't know, like some like magical thing like that. It might be something completely different. And that's fine, but we have to acknowledge that the universe is giving us this gift and like, what is that? And so fucking Liz, that was awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for swearing, Crystal.
Yes. I found a mutual soul sister.
I love that at the end you described yourself as beautiful. Well done.
Yeah.
I can't believe these women. This is incredible. Wow.
I love how you said that you knew you needed to figure stuff out before you can help other people. I love that. And the other thing that I love is that you're focusing on that niche of perfectionism, which so many of us struggle with. And I just think that that's such a great focus. And kudos to you too for being so freaking brave. Like, wow. Good stuff.
All right. Well, does anyone else have anything that they want to share, say? It can be about all speakers. Yeah, let's give every speaker a round of applause, even if silent.
I'm so humbled, Lily. I'm so humbled by all of it.
None of this is easy, huh? It's not easy to share your story. As rehearsed or practiced as it might be, it's not an easy thing.
Yeah, you guys did awesome and so brave. And the theme of tonight, which we forgot to announce, is fearlessness and growth, which is what all of these stories shared. And I just am so grateful for all of you. We definitely want to do this again. So if any of you ladies want to share your story, we welcome that opportunity. So just let Crystal or I know, and we'll put you on for another opportunity to do this. But we are going to do more of these, so stay tuned.
Thank you, Emily and Crystal, for
Thank
hosting.
you.
Yeah, I just would like to chime in and say that this is such a fantastic way for all of us to get to know one another, and you know, to express that vulnerability. There's an incredible deep bonding and sharing in that. So thank you for the opportunity for us to be able to do that. Appreciate it.
Well, and thank you for sharing.
Thanks for the opportunity.
All right, ladies. Well, we will do one more nice big emoji round of applause for our storytellers, and then I'll let you go off and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you all.
Bye.